Hello, I'm pleased to present some information today on NEH's Digital Humanities Advancement Grant Program. This webinar will cover both deadline dates for the 2024 cycle. In this session, I will provide some information that should help you determine whether this program is the right fit for your project, and also provide some guidance on how to use the program resources to help you prepare a competitive application. NEH's Office of Digital Humanities has offered the Digital Humanities Advancement Grant, or DHAG program, since 2017. This is a screenshot of the program resource page or landing page for the program. Much of the key information you will need can be found here. In this first section of text on the program resource page, we say that the overarching goal of this program is to support innovative, experimental, and/or computationally challenging digital projects, leading to work that can scale to enhance scholarly research, teaching, and public programming in the humanities. We go on to identify 3 programmatic priorities for DHAG. What sets this program apart from others at NEH that can support digital projects is this focus on innovation and experimentation. If your project is using established tools and methods, or is focused on perhaps digitizing a collection or creating a digital platform to share information using established methods, it might be a better fit for another program. We really do want to help applicants find the right grant program before putting in the time and effort to write a full application. NEH staff have prepared a series of resources intended to help applicants find the best fit for their projects. That set of resources can be accessed by clicking the link here. You'll see that this page has videos, blog posts, and application tips. I'd like to call your attention to the What Grant Program Fits My Digital Project, which is a very helpful blog post to help you navigate NEH funding for digital work, and also the Match Your Project to a Grant Program resource, which has a series of statements such as, I am organizing a scholarly conference, and I want to preserve, digitize, and/or make a collection accessible. Clicking on these will show you a list of possible NEH funding programs to support those sorts of projects. Returning to the program resource page and scrolling down, you'll see sections titled What's New and Reminders. The What's New section is where we flag up any substantive changes we have made to the program since the last deadline. So, new for 2024 are the fact that we're encouraging applicants who are not sure about the fit of their project to submit a brief inquiry for program officer feedback before or instead of preparing a draft application. This is intended to save you some time and effort and hear back from us more quickly. We also indicate that applicants at all 3 funding levels may request funding for sustaining, revitalizing, or recovering digital projects, and that level 3 applicants may now request up to $100,000 in matching funds. In the reminder section, we caution you to some issues to be aware of so that your application is not ruled ineligible and returned without review. Scrolling further down the program resource page, we also have an FAQ and several sample application narratives for all 3 funding levels. Finally, at the bottom of all of the NEH's program resource pages are some program statistics. You can see that for the DHAG program, we receive about 92 applications per deadline, and that the program has a 17% funding ratio. For 2023, we anticipate making about 12 to 15 awards. For 2024, we anticipate making about 12 to 15 awards per deadline with roughly $2.2 million in funding at both deadlines. Now I'll go through the information that you can find in the grant snapshot on the right of the page. Here we list maximum award amounts for the 3 funding levels. The snapshot says that this funding opportunity is for organizations, which means that DHAG makes awards to institutions rather than to individuals. With respect to eligibility, awardee institutions must be in the United States or one of its jurisdictions and be a nonprofit organization recognized as tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, an accredited institution of higher education, a state or local government or one of their agencies, or a federally recognized Native American tribal government. We also identify some possible grant outputs here. The next application deadline is January 11, 2024. This means that your application must be submitted through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on that date. If you have not used grants.gov previously, you will need to ensure that you have created registrations and passwords for both sam.gov and grants.gov. And if you have used grants.gov before, you are advised to make sure that your registration is up to date and that you can log in. We offer 2 funding deadlines each year, typically in January and June. So if you do not feel ready to submit by an upcoming deadline, you do have the option of planning an application for the following one. Another important date shown here is the deadline to submit an optional draft for program officer feedback. For the January deadline, this is on November 13, 2023, and for the June deadline, this will be on April 15, 2024. That information is in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. All right, at this point, I'd like to draw your attention to the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, for this program. The specific program priorities that I alluded to earlier appear on the first page of the NOFO. Applications should respond to one or more of these 3 programmatic priorities: research and refinement of innovative, experimental, or computationally challenging methods and techniques, enhancement or design of digital infrastructure that contributes to and supports the humanities, such as open source code, tools, or platforms, and evaluative studies that investigate the practices and the impact of digital scholarship on research, pedagogy, scholarly communication, and public engagement. Near the bottom of this section are a few important links. The first one will take you to a section of the NOFO starting on page 32 that lists several funding restrictions. Some of these funding restrictions appear because NEH has other programs to support those activities, and some are restricted across the entire endowment. You'll see that the first item on the list prohibits funding for projects that mainly involve digitization unless you propose an innovative method for digitization. The second item restricts funding for projects that primarily develop humanities content for websites, mobile applications, games, and virtual environments, unless you propose innovative methods or are developing new technologies. If your project falls into one of these categories or another one on this list, you'll likely want to consider another funding program, either at NEH or another organization. The NOFO also includes a section on related funding opportunities. This appears on page 39. Here you can read more about other programs at NEH that can support digital work. These are divided up in categories based on your proposed activities, audiences, and outputs. If, after reviewing all of the previous information, you've concluded that DHAG is indeed the best fit for your project, the next step is to determine the appropriate funding level. We have 3 funding levels designed to give you some flexibility based on the scope, maturity, and needs of your project. The discussion of funding levels starts on the very first page of the NOFO. Level 1 is appropriate for smaller projects or those at earlier stages of a larger project, where you might use funding to bring people together to scope out a research agenda or map out the next steps for your project. Level 1 funding can also be used to develop experimental alpha-level prototypes. Level 1 projects can have a duration or period of performance of up to 2 years. You can see the types of activities and outputs that are appropriate for Level 1 funding on this slide and in the NOFO. Level 2 is for projects that have completed an initial planning phase, not necessarily funded through the NEH or through DHAG, and are poised to scale up based on prior research and development. These projects can range between $75,000 and $150,000 and also have periods of performance of up to 2 years. Finally, Level 3 funding is to allow the scaling up and expansion of more mature projects with established user bases. Successful Level 3 projects must have robust dissemination plans beyond the applicant institution and include a formal sustainability plan. This plan should discuss the project's long-term financial needs and demonstrate how it will continue to meet its goals after the period of performance. Applicants at the Level 3 stage can request between $150,000 and $350,000 and have a period of performance of up to 3 years. Level 3 applicants may request up to an additional $100,000 in federal matching funds for a total award size of up to $450,000. Once you've identified the appropriate funding level for your project, you may wish to turn to the application component table on page 10 of the NOFO, which you can use as a sort of checklist as you're preparing the different sections of your application. Zooming in to the top portion of the table, you can see that certain sections are designated as required, recommended, or conditionally required. You can also see any page or paragraph limits. NEH will not review applications that are missing any required documents or relevant conditionally required documents, and will also not review applications that exceed mandatory page limits or deviate from formatting instructions. The main text of your application is called the narrative. You'll see that the page limit varies by funding level. In addition to the narrative, the other required attachments are a list of personnel, where you list all key project personnel, their titles and institutional affiliations, if any, and their role in the project. We ask that you clearly identify the project director and any co-directors in this list, and include the names of advisory board members, if any. You must also submit a work plan, a set of one-paragraph biographies for all key project personnel, and a data management plan. If you're submitting a Level 3 project, you must submit a sustainability plan as well. You may opt to include appendices. We recommend not exceeding 10 pages, and letters of commitment. Letters of support from individuals or organizations not involved in the project, however, are not allowed. There are 6 required sections that make up the narrative. These are overview of the project, enhancing the humanities, environmental scan, history of the project, activities and project team, and final products and dissemination. In this table, which appears on page 14 of the NOFO, we provide a crosswalk showing which review criteria correspond with which sections of the narrative. The DHAG program has 6 review criteria. These appear on pages 33 and 34 of the NOFO. These are the exact criteria that external peer reviewers will apply when reading and evaluating your application. The first review criterion is the clarity of the project's goals and significance and impact for the humanities. The sections of your application that should speak to this most directly are the overview of the project, enhancing the humanities, and final products and dissemination sections. In the NOFO, you can see the questions that reviewers will be asked to answer in preparing their comments. So it will be in your interest to state clearly what you plan to do during the period of performance and identify your project's proposed outcomes. Explain how your proposed activities will advance research, teaching, and learning in the humanities. Identify your intended users or audiences and detail your dissemination and outreach plans for reaching these communities. And describe the impact of your project. The second review criterion is the quality of the overall conception, organization, and description of how the proposed work sits within a broader context, and quality of the argument for new or further work in this area. To ensure you rate highly for this criterion, you will want to document and discuss related projects, and identify how your project addresses a gap in the literature or research and moves one or more fields forward. Number 3 is the feasibility and appropriateness of the activities, work plan, methodology, and use of technology, and the project's plans for mitigating risk and addressing accessibility for its intended audiences. Some tips related to this are to ensure that the activities and project team section and the work plan attachment are detailed and clear, that you create a realistic timeline and discuss potential risks and risk mitigation strategies. Discuss how your proposed methods and technologies will allow you to accomplish your project's goals, and detail strategies for ensuring your products are accessible for your intended audiences. Number 4 is the qualifications, expertise, and levels of commitment of the project director and key project staff or contributors. Here, you will want to explain the role each team member will play and document how that person's background and training makes them a good fit for the project. Ensure that each team member is appropriately credited for their contributions, and if your project includes early career or contingent staff, students, or interns, that they are receiving adequate mentorship or professional development opportunities. And describe strategies for recruiting people with appropriate skills when roles are identified without a named staff member. Number 5 is the reasonableness of the proposed budget in relation to the proposed activities, staff compensation, the anticipated results, products, and dissemination. So it will be in your interest to make sure that the budget and budget justification align with the goals and activities you've outlined in the narrative, that you've set aside adequate resources for team members commensurate with their contributions to the project, and that you explain how the lead institution will manage any technical assets or infrastructure if the project includes subrecipients, contractors, or consultants. Finally, the 6th review criterion is the quality and appropriateness of project plans for data management and, if applicable, sustainability. So here you will want to articulate the types of data you expect to produce, discuss plans for managing the data, including beyond the period of performance, and for Level 3 projects, demonstrate an understanding of the project's long-term needs and develop sufficient plans to ensure the sustainability of the project. At this point, I'll cover a few general tips for writing a competitive NEH application. So if you're applying to NEH for the first time, you may wish to review the information for first-time applicants' guidance. This is intended to help applicants better understand what we mean by the humanities and what sorts of activities are typically covered through our grant programs. You can also find some general application tips on the NEH website. All of these are relevant to DHAG, but a few to point out that I haven't already touched on are the first two under the Think About Your Audience section. These read, your application will be read by both specialists and generalists. You will need to persuade them that your project is important and that you know what you're doing. And the second is, make it easy for your readers. Write clearly and concisely. Avoid language that is too abstract, unclear, or jargon-laden. Define concepts and terminology. Another important one, or two more important ones, are in the attention to details section. The first is to ask colleagues, preferably those who are not in your field, to read a draft application. And then the very last one, to ask for feedback if you don't succeed and try again. Finally, we always encourage applicants to start the process earlier than you think you need to and to work closely with your Office of Sponsored Research on your campus or the equivalent office if you're not at a university. As the person serving with the title of Institutional Grants Administrator on the project, will be providing a lot of the key information on your application and will be the person who submits the application via grants.gov. So start early. Before I move on to wrap up with a brief discussion of the review process, I want to draw your attention to the NEH database of funded projects. Here you can search by keyword, program, project director name, institution, among many other search options. This is a really great way to surface funded projects that you might not have known about and can be especially helpful when preparing your environmental scan. Okay, finally, I want to go through the review process. So after you've submitted your application to NEH via grants.gov, you can expect to wait about 6 or so months to hear back. This is because the review process involves multiple stages and multiple people. It's very thorough. The process starts when an applicant begins preparing an application and submits it using grants.gov by the program deadline. After that, NEH staff review the applications to ensure that they are eligible, complete, and compliant, and assign them to panels and assemble a group of peer reviewers, typically with 5 members per panel. After the panels meet and discuss the applications, NEH staff identify a slate of applications, a subset of applications, to recommend for funding based on the peer review input and the amount of funding available. All of the recommended applications across NEH then go to the NEH National Council on the Humanities, which meets 3 times a year, typically in March, July, and November. After the council meets and deliberates, the NEH chair makes final funding decisions. The very last step is when we notify applicants as to whether their projects will be funded. Before I close, I'll remind you that staff in the Office of Digital Humanities and elsewhere at NEH are happy to answer any questions you might have. You can reach out to us at odh@nih.gov. With that, I will thank you for your time and attention and wish you the best of luck as you continue work on your projects.